Hello, DawgNation. Welcome in to Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. It's our weekly look at the top games on the college football slate from a point spread betting perspective. Obviously, not quite as robust a schedule this week as we had in week one, but there is still some entertainment to be had, and maybe more importantly for some of you, some money to be made. Maybe. Be careful if you actually use any of this intelligence as actionable. But nonetheless, we'll get ready to pick all of the big games coming up in a moment, including my own handiwork here at creating a spread for Georgia and Austin Peay, given the fact that as we record this on a Wednesday, a spread for a Power 4 top-ranked team and an FCS team, that is not widely available as of press time. But we think we have something pretty close, and if it's anything like last year, our spread's probably better than the actual spread. So we will give that to you coming up in just a moment. Prior to that, though, we obviously write this stuff down. How do we do week one? Let's take a look at how things went. And boy, how about the start for Connor Riley? 5-1 last week. Jeff Sentell also winning week last week at 4-2. Me and Kaylee both split even 3-3. Mike goes 2-4. Dari goes 0-6, but that's simply nothing more than a pre-rally decline. So that is week one. Get a little bit of a feel underneath you, and you sort of figure out kind of where we go from here. Dari, Payrow, I will ask you from R.S. Andrews before we get rolling. How are you feeling about the board for this week?
Sure. I mean, last week was just complete misses everywhere. I mean, I'm sure I didn't win one. I thought I won one game, but that's all right. I'll spot you guys a pretty big runway, and we'll just build from here. You know, it's is what it is. Bad week, and we'll get back at it.
That's exactly what I like to hear right there. That is the exact right mindset. And speaking of get right back at it, we do that with the Georgia Bulldogs taking on the Governors from Austin Peay. Interesting week last week for Austin Peay. In-state rivalry renewed for the first time since the late 1980s against Middle Tennessee. Austin Peay, which was more than a touchdown underdog, ended up winning the game by 3 touchdowns. Now, Middle Tennessee State was not a winning team in 2024. Don't expect them to be in 2025. It is still notable, though, when an FCS team beats a FBS team by a wide margin, as happened last week. Oftentimes, you do not see FBS, Power 4, FCS lines as early in the week as we record this show. So it requires me, not the smartest guy in the world, to break out some rudimentary Bayes theorem here, and I have done so by making Georgia a 44.5-point favorite against Austin Peay. As you make your pick, we'll let you to tell me how you feel about the line overall. Mike Griffith, starting with you. Georgia trying to once again win easily against what we believe to be an overmatched foe. We make the line 44.5. By we, I mean me. What do you think about the line? And more importantly, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, I think my record in this is always affected by going with Georgia as a big underdog. Kirby now 0-13-1, favored by 38.5. It sure looked good last week when they were up 45-0 on Marshall. But you know, I'm going to take the candy again. I feel like Kirby wants Gunner to get the ball down the field. When he talked about what's next, he said trusting his offensive line. Georgia's got to polish it up. I mean, this is the last warm-up game before Tennessee. I don't think Kirby was happy with the fourth quarter finish with the guys that got in. I may not see, you know, that sort of faulty execution on the back end. So give me Georgia, and I'll lay the points and probably take another L. But it's hard to bet against Kirby Smart with the team that he has this year.
So that is Mike Griffith taking Georgia. Jeff Sentell, how about you? The number we're going with is 44.5.
Interesting pick here this week. I was initially blinded by what Louisville did to Austin Peay last year. I believe it was 62-0. But then I dug into a little bit to the Governors. Might have been because I drove by Austin Peay last weekend, but they got a lot of returners. They got a veteran quarterback back. They got a veteran kickoff guy back. They took some transfers in. They have 38 returners from last year. That makes me fall in love with the Austin Peay this week. I'm going to take those points and pick the Governors.
So a little bit of a split decision here thus far. Jeff on the side of the Governors, Mike on the side of Georgia. Connor, Riley, how about for you? First of all, what do you think about my line? And second of all, what do you want to do with it?
It feels a little low. I think maybe 48.5 might have been where I come in at. Maybe, just because usually you see these 50-point spreads. Georgia, and this is the logic I used last week, and I'm going to roll it back out there again. Georgia could win 56-14. I think a lot of people would go home happy, and that is an Austin Peay cover. And so I'm going to use that logic, and I'm going to back the Governors in Athens this Saturday.
So to be fair, when we see the posted line later in the week, which will come out, Thursday-ish, day from now when we're recording this, I do project that the actual point spread will be higher. But I will also point out a year ago against Tennessee Tech, while the stated spread, the official spread, was higher than my spread, the truth is that number was never in play. My number was in play the entire time. So the modest portion of me, Connor, takes pains to admit this, but my number a year ago was better than the stated number for that FBS versus FCS game.
The book of BA is one you just got to know how to gamble and know how to bet on, and that is a big reason why I think I am taking Austin Peay to cover this week.
And when you say things like, oh, the line feels too low, this is how people like me just reel you in right there. That's how I build these palaces. If only that was the case. Kaylee Mansell, how about for you? 44.5.
There's the age-old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I took a flyer on Georgia to cover last week, and they did not. And then based on what we heard Kirby Smart say this past week about wanting to see the younger players and the freshmen get playing time, I'm going to stick with what I know here, and I'm going to take Austin Peay.
Yeah, listen, as Kaylee Mansell said, the problem with games like this from a betting perspective, and this is why, and I cannot stress this enough, if you are dying to wager your hard-earned money on a game, please bet a different game than this. If I'm making up the point spread in thin air, that should tell you everything you need to know. There is a better opportunity for you to find value than this because, as everyone has at least alluded to, Georgia had the game well in hand last week, probably got jobbed by the officials on a would-be pass interference that set up the lone Marshall score that also took away the chance for the cover. But all of this in the second half of a 40-point game with backups in on both sides becomes a bit of a luck box pinball machine, Plinko type deal. So bet something different if you want to. We're doing this for fun because of a contest. And as Kaylee said, last week I took Georgia, felt good in doing so because that's how bad I think Marshall is. But now this week, since that one didn't quite get home, the only choice you have is to revert back to the overwhelming evidence, now 0-13 in the smart arrow and favored by the wide margin, similar to what it is here on this particular Saturday, that Georgia just doesn't cover this number. As Kirby explicitly stated this week, he's just not that into that. And that is the story. I will take Austin Peay plus the 44.5. Keep in mind, by the way, the last time, now you got to go back 2018 for this, the last time Georgia played Austin Peay, that game was even shortened. So not only do you not necessarily know how much Georgia wants to run up the score, you can't even be guaranteed they'll play the full 60 minutes because last time they didn't. But nonetheless, Austin Peay plus the 44.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Governors. What do you want to do, Dari? The flow is on Austin Peay.
Yeah, I took that candy last week, and usually I always take the unders of other teams on these when the spreads are so big against Georgia, just because Kirby doesn't cover those. So I'm gonna take the Governors. I'm gonna ride with you guys. Austin Peay is gonna cover this. Too big of a number.
And thankfully, next week, we talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We are talking about a big step up in competition, and won't that be pleasant to consider? Now, let's shift gears to the other big game of the weekend. And admittedly, week 2 is nowhere near as filled with exciting contests the way that last weekend had them over the course of a 4-day period in total. We had a lot of good games. There are far fewer of these in week 2, but this particular game I find to be very exciting because on paper, it appears to be not just teams, but programs trending in different directions. At the end of last season, certainly prior to the upset win against Alabama, Oklahoma was thought to have a coach as likely to be fired as any major program. Brent Venables appeared to be on the hot seat. Then they pulled the shocking upset against Alabama, and they were very aggressive in the transfer portal, bringing in John Mateer, new offensive coordinator to go along with him, Jaden Ott, the running back from Cal, and suddenly an Oklahoma team that was given up for dead was actually listed in the Associated Press top 25 preseason top 20. On the other side, Michigan, a year removed from a national championship, they're the lingering effects of the of the Connor Stallions issue. Sharon Moore will be suspended for games this year, not this one, but that continues to be an issue for Michigan. And yet, is it really that simple? Oklahoma is at home, favored 5.5 points against Michigan. I think it's a fun game. It's a great uniform game, two of the truly venerable programs in the entire sport. Mike, do you like it as much as me? And what do you want to do with Oklahoma favored 5.5 at home against Michigan?
Yeah, it's a little, that spread's a little big, but I think this is a must-win game for Brent Venables. Michigan, a lot of newness, extremely talented quarterback, but a freshman nonetheless, making his second start in a very hostile road environment. So when in doubt, I go with the SEC home team in these non-conference games. So give me the Sooners and lay the 5.5.
So Mike on the side of OU. Jeff Sentell, how about you?
In the words of the late great Keith Jackson, whoa Nelly on this one. If my math is correct, this might be the first matchup of NIL quarterbacks both making at least $3 million per season between Michigan and John Mateer. I like what Underwood has to offer, especially in this game plan where he doesn't have to be the guy. He shows a lot of first-round traits. At 5.5 is a pretty thick number for me. I think it's going to be probably the best game of the weekend, especially with these dual threat quarterbacks dueling. I'm going to take Michigan in the points. I like the Wolverines in this one anyway.
So split decision here. Connor, how about for you? OU favored 5.5.
A whole lot of love here for Bryce Underwood coming out of his debut against New Mexico, but there's a different reason and a different name that I like Michigan this week on the road. Justice Haynes, a name Georgia fans know very well, big-time former recruiting target out of Blessed Trinity there in the Roswell area here in Georgia, goes to Alabama, was on that Alabama team last year that lost at Oklahoma, that kept Alabama out of the college football playoff. A big week one. I think he's going to have a big week this week. I think they're going to use Underwood's dual threat ability to keep that Oklahoma defense guessing. And the reality is that Oklahoma team a week ago did not exactly light the world on fire against Illinois State. So I like Michigan here to cover the spread. And actually, if I were betting this game, I'd sprinkle it on the money line for Michigan to win outright.
No, I think that's actually probably pretty sound advice overall. So a little bit of love forming for the maize and blue. Kaylee, how about for you?
Yeah, this one was honestly pretty tough, but it did take a whole 4 quarters for Michigan to expand that lead over New Mexico, despite being the 34.5-point favorite. I do think that Bryce Young will end up being not Bryce Young, sorry, I've got fantasy on my mind. Bryce Underwood will end up being some sort of generational talent, but this is his first true big road test. So when you look at the quarterback battle here, I'm going to take the one that has more collegiate experience. So I am going to take Oklahoma here.
It's interesting. I am going to take Michigan. And listen, there's no bigger SEC homer than me, typically speaking. But in this particular case, the prevailing wisdom for me almost always is going to be contrarian. I just see right now Michigan nationally as one of the most undervalued teams in the country. They have a very soft schedule. They were one of my favorite overs on a win total to begin the year. I think, and I understand why, a team like, say, Penn State in the Big Ten is getting far more attention. But Michigan has almost been relegated to the role of now they just play spoiler for an Ohio State team that has won the national championship. I still see more than that when I look at Michigan. Conversely, I have Oklahoma as one of my more overrated teams in America. I like their under on a win total. I do believe that Brent Venables gets fired at the end of this season. And I think a lot of opinions changed on Oklahoma on the basis of a couple of transfers. And I don't quite think you can cosmetically alter a program quite so fast. I think it's a rough year for Venables in Oklahoma. I think this is the first example of that. I like Michigan, and I'm a little safer, so I'll just take them plus the points, but I don't hate the idea of them actually winning the game outright because I believe that's what they will do. But to be safe, it's Michigan plus the points for me. That puts the flow on the side of Big Blue. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take Michigan as a dog on the road at Oklahoma?
Boomer Sooner. I like Oklahoma at home in this game. I think Kaylee kind of touched on it. Underwood, this is not only like a big road environment that he's going into. I mean, this is a big game. and he's a gamer, but like this is his first big game and it's on the road. And I think there's going to be a lot going on. I like Mateer. I like what I saw from him. He broke Baker Mayfield's debut record, almost passed him for 400 yards. I think that's a missing piece that will give Venerable some confidence with his defense now, knowing that he's got the offense to push a lead up or get back in a game. So I like Oklahoma to win this and cover that number. Probably not by a lot because I think Michigan's going to fight in this game, but I like them to get the job done.
Another SEC team hosting a Power 4 non-conference opponent on Saturday is Mississippi State. The opponent, the Arizona State Sun Devils, which roll in sporting a very nice number 12 ranking overall. And, of course, this week, Sun Devils coach Kenny Dillingham has been bringing out the cowbells at practice. They want to get ready for the noise, which, if I'm being honest, is not sometimes quite as loud as it's cracked up to be. These two teams didn't meet a year ago. This is the renewal of that one, now swinging back to Stark Vegas. Number we have here, Mississippi State, maybe a smallish number, smaller than some folks think. Mississippi State, just a 6.5-point underdog, hosting Arizona State, fresh off a CFP appearance for Sparky a year ago. Mike Griffith, how about Mississippi State hosting Arizona State? What do you want to do?
Yeah, Maroon Bulldogs went out there to Tempe last year and played Sun Devils within a touchdown, coming off a nice win over Southern Miss, a good test. Arizona State, conversely, with some struggles against Northern Arizona. So give me the Maroon Bulldogs in Starkville.
So Mike on the side of MSU, Jeff Sentell, what about you?
Hey, man, guys, I tell you what, SEC owners are going to hate me for this one. I like Arizona State a lot. I think they're one of the better teams in the country. I think their head coach, Coach Dillingham, Kenny Dillingham, is one of the better head coaches, up-and-coming head coaches. Maybe he's in line for one of these jobs that everybody talks about is going to turn over this year. I'm not worried about the point spread, even though these two teams played close this year. Give me the Sun Devils, especially since they got their eyes on the prize, staying far away from Starkville and out of the casinos this week.
So Jeff Sentell just laying lumber like 1,000 miles from home. That's it's quite a pick. Connor Riley, how about for you?
Look, one, I have to give Mike credit last week. We were on the opposite sides in best bets, and he did have Mississippi State covering against Southern Miss. However, this week I am riding with the Sun Devils. Look, as America's premier Arizona State tout last year, look, this team has to replace Cam Scatterby, very important piece. I really like Sam Leavitt. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in college football. I'm still skeptical of what this Mississippi State team is going to be this season. And while, yes, that number reeks, and I'm sure BA is going to come in with some over-the-top numbers that only further hammer home why he's going to take Mississippi State, I do like Arizona State to win. Now, if this were 7.5, as I've seen at some books, I'd maybe feel differently, but that we're getting this at 6.5 here, a big number. I like that for Arizona State.
So a lot of love for Sparky right now. Kaylee, maybe more than I expected. What do you think?
This may be the one that I end up regretting. I'm going to side with Mike on this. Arizona State 0-2 all-time on the road against SEC opponents and just 1-6 playing the conference as a whole. They had 12 penalties in their first game, which concerns me a little bit. I do think that Arizona State will get the win, but I'm going to take Mississippi State plus the points. I don't think that the cowbells at their practice, like the one or two that they had, are really going to make a difference. So I'm going to take a flyer on Mississippi State here. So
Kaylee says Klanga, and I'm going to say it with her. And listen, Connor mentioned I do typically like to bring out a lot of fancy stats in this show, but the honest truth is last week I was only 3-3. So I'm trying to keep it simple for now. And this is a window into my simply minded and simply wired brain. As Mike said, and this does mean something to me, these two teams played in Tempe a year ago. A very good Arizona State team only won by a touchdown. That's something to consider. Here's thing number two. And as I told you, as someone who mostly operates on contrarian thinking, in the Big 12, it's a league that I really like. I like to watch the games there. But there is a huge gravitational pull towards the middle. Typically speaking, I'm down on those projected at the top of the conference and up on those projected at the bottom. Well, for now, Arizona State, because of what it did a year ago, even with Scatterby no longer being there, is still projected near the top of the conference. That's a hard no from me. This league is too topsy-turvy for that. I'm not saying they're going to lose on Saturday, but I will caution you that while Mississippi State may be a total disaster before the season comes to an end, season just started. Folks in maroon feeling pretty good. My guess is it's a pretty good atmosphere. All I need is this one to sort of hang around and be a little closer than a touchdown by the time it's all said and done. I'll take a back door. I like Mississippi State here, plus the points. I think the book is telling you something, that this one's not quite so easy for an Arizona team that's got the number next to its name. That also puts the flow on the side of bully. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take Mississippi State?
No, give me the Sun Devils. I think Mississippi State's going to show some fight in this game. I think it's going to probably be a pretty entertaining game throughout. I think Mississippi State may even have the lead at halftime. But I think as this game goes on, Arizona State's going to prove too much, and they're going to have too much offense for the Bulldogs to keep up. Give me Arizona State to cover that number.
How about yeah, very good. How about another now SEC team hosting another Power 4 opponent in a non-conference game? It's not a great week, but if you look hard enough, you can find some games of interest. This one sees the Missouri Tigers renewing its classic rivalry and a big rivalry for those who live in this part of the country against the Kansas Jayhawks. At this point in the season, we probably know more about Kansas than we do Missouri. Kansas played week 0. Fairly comfortable win, at least convincing somewhat, against Fresno State. Missouri, on the other hand, maybe you didn't see them last week against a lesser opponent, but they put up a big number, although it was costly. Quarterback Sam Horn, who you may remember from here in the state of Georgia as the former Collins Hill Eagle, injured at the beginning of that game. And yet, in this particular case, Missouri still finding itself hosting Kansas as a 6.5-point favorite. I love the rivalry. I'm glad we're picking it. Missouri is favored over KU. Mike Griffith, it shifts back to you.
Yeah, I think this Missouri team's sneaky good. I feel like, Devod Wilson debuted with 2 sacks for the Tigers last week, albeit it wasn't against the greatest competition. But that's a positive start. Eli Drinkwitz seems to have this program going in the right direction. A lot of questions about Kansas football. I know they've got some facilities underway, but they're not there yet. So give me the Tigers to cover in this game.
So, Mike, on Mizzou, Jeff Sentell, what about you?
Close. I think it's a very close game. Obviously, they're in the same part of the heart of our country. I think FPI has these two teams very close. I like maybe what the angle that Brandon was talking about earlier. I think early Mizzou might have something. I think, Damon Wilson, 2 sacks last weekend. I thought that was very impressive. You got Williams Winery there too, flying around, and you got the home field. So I'd like Missouri in this one.
Connor, a lot of love for MIZZOU. How about for you?
I like Kansas in this game for a simple fact it is a rivalry game. And I think Kansas has the better quarterback in Jalen Daniels. And so I don't feel great about this. I know it was a big score a week ago, but I don't necessarily love what I saw from Missouri in the early parts of that game. So give me Kansas here to get at least a cover in this rivalry game and keep it close.
Yeah, and as Connor said, I think this is a fun rivalry game. These are the sort of games, especially in a week like this, that I think we should be picking, and I'm glad we are. Kaylee, what about you?
Hopefully this is the only time I have to ever use this excuse, but I do feel like out of all of the games that we're picking, these are the two that were hardest to form an opinion about on their game 1 performances. And so I don't make this pick with confidence, but this is why I'm going to turn to Vegas, and I'm going to go with the favorite. So give me Missouri.
Kaylee is on Missouri. I am on Missouri too. And many of you know, especially if you're a regular listener or viewer to DawgNation Daily, that among my favorite season win totals to begin the season was Missouri, commonly found at 7.5. This is a very soft schedule for Missouri. This team that's won 10 games over the course of the last 2 years, and each of the last 2 years, quietly Eli Drinkwitz is doing more than people realize. As Jeff Sentell and others have also touched on, I think they have a very good defense, too. Now, I agree with Connor Riley. Jalen Daniels is the better, certainly more proven quarterback in this game. But if you watch the game against Fresno State, Kansas, man, they really turned him loose, put him in harm's way a lot, and against a Missouri defense that kind of want to hunt, kind of wants to hunt right now. I think that could be problematic, and that, for me, is the edge. I said before, not doing a lot of fancy stats here this week, kind of going with my gut, trying to get back to the winning side after just a 3-3 week a year ago. My gut, as prodigious as it is, has been saying Missouri for the entirety of the offseason. I am not changing my mind on that now. I do like Missouri minus the 6.5. Dari, how about for you? There is a lot of love. The flow decidedly on the Tigers here. You want to go with the flow against Missouri in this fun rivalry game.
it's the border war, right? They brought it back. Did they break out the Indian war drum? Did they give that back, or is that like been canceled as far as that trophy? But that's what the winner gets on this. I'm just going to go with Missouri because I think that's a tough place to go win on the road. Really don't know how it'll play out. Like Connor said, this is a rivalry game. It could get pretty tight, but I'm going to take Missouri.
So Dari, Payrow on the side of Missouri. Of course, Dari loves making picks and is good at it. But the thing that Dari and the entire team at RS Andrews are even better at is taking care of you when it comes to your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. That's what RS Andrews is all about. So as we're still in the hot weather time of year, that means getting your AC unit tuned up. Or if you have a big football weekend coming up, the last thing you want to have that ruined because your water heater went out. Well, the RS stands for rapid service. That means in many cases, your water heater, if it goes out, can be replaced the same day, or any other plumbing emergency of that type that you might be dealing with. Of course, our friends at RS Andrews can handle all of that for you. So please find them online at rsandrews.com. I'll also tell you this, that if you like Go With The Flow here presented by RS Andrews, you'll also love our RS Andrews Cool Down at the conclusion of DawgNation Daily. On the Friday episode of our program, in addition to all the picks you're getting on this show right now, we'll also give you a look at a revenge game in the SEC as the Ole Miss Rebels go to the Kentucky Wildcats. Of course, last year, the win for Big Blue probably kept Ole Miss out of the college football playoff. What happens between these two teams this year and what is the first SEC game of the year? We'll give that for you as a part of the RS Andrews Cool Down on the Friday edition of DawgNation Daily. But prior to that, one more pick to give you as a part of Go With The Flow here presented by RS Andrews. And speaking of the SEC, it is the, as I like to call them, the lousy, stinking Gators. First time they've made the show this year, hosting South Florida. The Bulls, the big surprise of week 1 when they went and shocked, at least surprised. Let's not get too crazy. Surprised Boise State in firm control of that game, despite the fact that the Broncos came in as the favorite. We've also seen South Florida keep it close with Alabama in recent years. Florida, on the other hand, thinks this can be a turnaround year after 4 straight wins to conclude last season. But all of that depends on the pressure resting on the shoulders of DJ Lagway. And oh, yeah, by the way, one of those shoulders is hurt. So it's Florida as a 17.5-point favorite hosting the South Florida Bulls. Mike Griffith, we go back to you.
Yeah, a lot of momentum for South Florida after beating a playoff team, Boise State. I think it's going to be a little bit different climate in the swamp, though. And, the Gators, I know there's still some questions about DJ Lagway. Their backup quarterback looked pretty good, though, Brandon. They didn't have much of an opponent with Long Island U. The Sharks didn't have much bite. Bulls will certainly be more powerful, but not enough to cover the spread in the swamp.
In a non-Sharknado situation, would there be sharks in Long Island? Feels like there probably wouldn't be, but maybe that just shows how little I know. Either way, though, I'll tell you this. The betting action on the South Florida Boise State game last week, one-way street on the Bulls before we got to it. Everybody saw that outcome coming, and a lot of people cashed. Will they be so fortunate this time around? Jeff Sentell, tell us. What do you want to do? Florida favored 17.5.
I can't wait for the consternation in BA's gut and Connor with some rocket science wizardry on this one after the lousy stinking is picked to cover back-to-back by both Jeff and Mike this week.
So Jeff also on the side of Florida. Connor, help me out here. I am a Gator hater. I have probably had more love for Florida than I can stand. Please tell me you're not going to join it too.
I really was. I came in here fully expecting to do so, but Mike and Jeff feeling very strongly about Florida here. And look, this is a South Florida team who I was the one who was on the show a year ago who was brave enough to pick them to cover against to cover against Alabama, and they did. Alex Golsh, Tennessee system, familiar with this Florida team. I think that they're going to find a way to keep this a little bit closer. So while I was ready to take Florida and jump all over them because some of the underlying metrics from that Boise State game are not as impressive as the final score would lead you to believe, I got to go with my gut on this one, and I'm going to take South Florida plus 17 in the hook.
So there you go. Connor on the Bulls. Kaylee, what about you?
This is one of those that I kind of was just going to wait until how I felt in the moment. I'm going to go against my gut, and not because Connor did it, but because I could see South Florida kind of doing what Marshall did last week when you take out a lot of those starting guys and then you see how thin the quarterback room is behind DJ Lagway. If they take those guys out just to prevent injury from when they face LSU, I could see like a late backdoor kind of cover. So I usually go with my gut here, but I'm going to go against it, and I'm going to take South Florida, regretfully.
So Kaylee on South Florida. Look, I'm going to be on South Florida too. And once again, I'm trying to keep it simple this week, try to get back onto some winning ways here. And this is a simple read on this. An early season, that's about as good as you're going to get. I don't think Florida's good. I think that Billy Napier remains in some real trouble there. And I'm not going to let the recency bias of a couple of wins near the end of last season change my mind on that. And in addition to this, I don't think DJ Lagway is healthy. DJ Lagway did not practice very much this summer, absent from scrimmages, finally worked his way back into 11 on 11 as the season came to an end. That is not a storyline that has been brought into full conclusion and resolution as of yet. And you better believe if there's any lingering doubt, they're not going to get him hurt against South Florida with what comes in future weeks. Gators still play an incredibly difficult schedule. That's enough for me. This half point may loom large. 17.5 is what we're going with. But my doubts about Florida, as objective as I'm capable of being, my concerns about the Lagway injury and how Florida might try to coach around that in this spot, that's enough. I like South Florida plus 17.5 here. Dari, the flow is now also on the side of the Bulls. You want to go with the flow and take South Florida.
Yeah, we'll roll with USF here. I think it's too many points. I think they're gonna have a lot of fight in this game. I don't think they're gonna pull off an upset, but the last time they played was 3 years ago, and it was a 3-point game. So I think it's 17.5 is just too much.
So that is the story on that. A lot of picks here as a part of Go With The Flow. We're also trying something a little bit different this week, dropping the show for you a little early, give you a chance to see more of it before the games kick off there on Saturday. But if you want a fun revenge game in the SEC as Lane Kiffin tries to get back at the team that kept him out of the college football playoff last year, you'll have to tune into the Friday edition of DawgNation Daily and our R.S. Andrews Cool Down to see that. Plus, our best bets, and there will be some doozies there as we expand the board and look at other action. You'll see that on the Friday edition of DawgNation Daily. For now, thanks for being a part of Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. Hope you enjoy all the games here this weekend. If you do bet some money, best of luck on that. We'll see if Georgia covers the big number, and we'll come back and we'll talk to you next week as we get ready for the big one between Georgia and Tennessee right here on Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews.